1.
Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to the Product Management Group conversation. I'm Scott Williamson, the EVP of Product. Happy Monday. Happy Martin Luther King Day to those in the U.S. And for those long-suffering Chiefs fans like myself, I'm calling this the Kansas City Chiefs Day too. All right. So happy to take any questions. I don't see any yet, but fire away. Yeah. Hey, John, do you want to voice over your question? Hey, John. Looks like you have the first one. Go for it.
Yeah, I'm taking Sid up on his challenge of asking the first question. I'm two for two now. Hey, one of the things I know you've been working on is hiring a PM on your team to own pricing and packaging and to own that. Any updates on that, on how you're doing?
Yeah, we hired somebody. She starts on February 4th. So super excited about that.
That's awesome news. Congratulations.
Yeah. And we're also working with a third party right now on some analysis on our current pricing and packaging, and she'll join sort of midstream on that, but she'll benefit from a bunch of homework that we're doing right now and then can carry it forward and help implement any changes we choose to make. So that was a tough hire. It's a pretty specialized skill set, so awesome to land her. Other questions? This be the world record for speed on a group conversation. All right, here we go. Christy, can you talk more about enterprise readiness? Of course. For those of you who've been in the deck, you'll see the way we thought about our budget and where to put incremental hiring for next year was framed around themes. And the number one theme is enterprise readiness. And the logic behind that is that we've seen a real surge in demand from that segment. Our sales team is having good luck sort of getting their attention, and they seem to be buying the GitLab story and vision and value. However, they also have very specific needs. They tend to be larger. They tend to be more complex. They tend to need a bit more configuration or options than maybe a small to mid-sized company would. And so we want to really invest to make sure that enterprises have an awesome experience using GitLab. There's this enterprise readiness is really a cross-stage theme. Almost every stage will contribute to it. The ones that will contribute the most directly to it are manage and enablement, and to some degree create as well. All have really important things to deliver for that customer segment. The one that's sort of the most, I guess, under-resourced at the moment is manage. We have teams in there around audit. We have teams that are working on our access management stuff. There's an import team in there. All three of those have a backlog of things that segment really wants. And most of those teams are small and just being formed. So we're routing new hires there. That area is sort of our number one hiring priority. So we're going to try to bolster those teams as much as we can to deliver as much against this enterprise readiness theme as we can, as fast as we can. This story is somewhat similar in enablement. We have an ecosystem team, which is going to be delivering APIs that this segment really wants. The geo team is super important for this area. The distribution team is super important for this area, plus memory and database. A lot of this enterprise readiness also has to do with making sure that .com is enterprise ready. And so that enablement team has a bunch of work to do there. And many of those teams are sort of undersized relative to what we need them to do. So what we want to do is make sure we have priority in our heads as we're adding new folks, and make sure we hire in the right sequence to deliver against that theme. Christy, any questions? Any place else you want me to take that?
Yeah, that was a great answer. And so part of what I think I'm hearing you say is that as teams are prioritizing this year, they may be asked to prioritize things that are not necessarily customer facing features, but things that just stabilize our platform. And so teams probably need to be prepared to expect that.
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. These companies expect stability, reliability. They have a lot of dollars that these systems rely on. And so they expect a high level of scale and stability, and the expectations are going up on that front. So yes, some of this stuff will not take the form of a feature. Some of it will. Some of it is just making sure we meet their expectations on some of these non-functional requirements.
Well, stability and performance are key to the user experience. So
yes.
I strongly support this decision.
Yep. Other questions?
All right, I'll throw another one out there since there aren't any, and I'll add it to the agenda after I say it. You talk about competing against GitHub. I would love to hear your thoughts on. I read this slide, but I'd love to hear you just kind of talk about what do you think that means?
You're cut out a little bit, at least on my end. Christy, can you reword that?
Yeah, you betcha. I think the next highest priority theme was around competing with GitHub. And so I'd love to hear you just talk about what do you think that means for us?
Well, there's a segment of our customers, a pretty big one, according to our sales team, that starts out with source code management or CI or a combination of the two. And that's primarily what they're grading us on when they buy. I think many of them like that we can go broad, but their initial focus is more sort of in that middle core part of our product. And while we've spent the last year going broad, we sort of over invested in some of these newer areas. We did not invest percentage-wise quite as much in some of these core areas like source code management and continuous integration. I think we still have a nice lead there, but we don't want to cede that because many companies base much of their buying criteria on how competitive we are there. So this is about making sure those teams have enough investment to keep us in the lead on those core areas. So at a high level, that's how I would frame it. This year we want to be a bit more targeted about where we spend rather than just going sort of peanut buttering investment across the stages. We want to be strategic about where we put incremental people. We can't hire as fast as a growth percentage as last year. So we have to be a bit more disciplined and strategic about where we put people. And I feel like those areas would be at risk of falling behind GitHub if we don't spend there.
Thank you.
Yep. Christopher, yeah, go for it.
Hey, Scott, I wasn't sure how to best articulate this, so bear with me for a second. But, basically, we've gone through a planning process for FY21. You mentioned a number of things that, we'd love to have on the list, but we don't have the budget associated with it. And, let's assume for the moment that the business model is stable and we're not going to get additional budget.
Yeah.
How do we evaluate, what's our threshold for when we reevaluate either things on that list or otherwise? Because I think that's going to be something that's going to be a recurring theme for us.
Yeah, I think it'll have to just be a fluid process of taking a look at the opportunity size. Like if sales came in or we believe there was a huge opportunity that in one of those, we'll have to weigh that against where we already have people in investment. And in many cases this past year, we changed investments. We built new teams that we hadn't planned on at the beginning of the year. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if we dip into that list and maybe slow roll stuff that we thought we were going to spend on. We're in such a dynamic space with so many target areas, and it's hard to predict 12 months in advance where the best investment will be. So luckily we have a pretty fluid planning process. Every quarter we basically replan our head count. We'll probably do it even more often than that. And if we see an opportunity, either through our own research or talking to customers or talking to our field teams, we can and will shift, maybe focus on a charter we hadn't originally intended to. Did that get to the question?
Yeah, I think so. Thanks.
Okay. Yep. All right, Christy, number 5.
At the risk of dominating the conversation,
Go
but
for it.
for no other questions. I know this is something that you and I have worked on together, so it's a little selfish that I'm asking this question, and I'm happy to help you answer it too, but I think it's an interesting and important one. So you have an OKR this quarter around achieving category maturity plans. We have shifted how we are going to start evaluating category maturity, and I wonder if you could just share a little bit about that.
Yeah, right now, category maturity is based on our own internal assessment of where we are. So it's an internal read on our maturity. So I love that we have a maturity framework. I love that we think about it, but assessing it purely from our own standpoint might be a bit myopic. We might not fully understand where we really are. So what we want to do is use external opinion to determine where we are in a maturity curve. And we're going to use something that Christy's team has championed called UX scorecards. Previously, UX scorecards have been done by designers and researchers on the UX team. And we sort of gave it our own grade. And what it does is it looks at a key workflow. So let's say it's in Secure. It would take the number one job to be done that customers have in Secure. We would describe what that workflow is, and then we would measure ourselves against how we're doing on delivering a good customer experience there with letter grades A through F, kind of like school. And what we're going to do is we're going to start using those grades from those scorecards to determine our maturity levels. And Christy and her team have come up with a scoring system there. And instead of doing it ourselves, we're actually going to interview customers and have them grade it. So it'll be based on how well we're doing on key jobs to be done and how customers rate us. So it's kind of it's an expensive grading system because you have to go set up the meetings and get customers, but we feel like it'll be more accurate, and that's a good exercise to go through anyway. Anything you want to add, Christy?
Yeah, it's beautifully said.
Okay. Other questions?
I'm going to verbalize it, and then I'll type it in a second, Scott. So on slide 19,
Yep.
Is it fair to assume that that's your priority list? That's ordered in priority? I mean, I assume that list is priority. You want to talk about if there was more, slide 19, if there was more R&D budget available, where would we invest? Is that your priority list, or is that just a list?
Well, this is in priority, yes, sort of rough priority. Like if we had another room for another team or another handful of folks, where would we put them? This is our current thinking. Again, this could change, but it's actually a longer list than this, and we'll know by the end of tomorrow. The fact is we're going to have to move more people, more hires out of FY21 than we thought even a couple of weeks ago because the budget targets are changing. So this list is going to get longer, and we'll probably not be able to fund things that we thought were funded a couple of weeks ago, if that makes sense.
Got it.
Yep.
Thanks, Scott.
You bet.
Hey, Scott, how's it going finding a permanent PM for fulfillment?
Yeah, well, we have we have a finalist that I'm interviewing this week. So if that works out, hopefully we'll have a PM soon. If not, I actually can't tell you what the funnel looks like for that particular role. But it's in our top 7, which means it gets sourcing support. And so I would expect to have that hired in the next month or 2 if we don't land the finalist this week.
Okay. And I have the next question too. What's the best way to find devs who want to work on internal business operations projects?
I don't know. I guess it would depend on what kind of work it is. Our developers are busy. So I think it would have to qualify as a project that's of high enough priority to justify them not working on what they normally would. So I think it's a function of what we're trying to do. Does it fit in a charter for a specific team? And if so, is it high enough priority? That's probably how I'd encourage you to think about it. So feel free to let me know if there's something in that vein.
Fantastic.
Christy, go ahead.
So looking again at slide 19, which seems to be the popular slide today.
Yeah, everybody focuses on like what we can't do.
So item 2 is improved UX on mobile devices, which I agree, by the way. I think that's really important. So my question was, I wonder if we can tackle this to some extent without necessarily having teams dedicated to it, either by, well, not either, actually, by both pushing pajamas forward, but then also having PMs and product designers really focus on responsiveness as part of the design process when we're rolling out features.
Yep.
Have you any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. I think we're gonna have to tackle this as a broader team. At one point we envisioned a dedicated team. That won't be possible. I did talk to Eric Brinkman a little bit about the web IDE team taking somewhat of a lead on this to make sure that the IDE renders well on mobile. And as far as I know, they're okay taking on that as a charter within that team. So hopefully we can make some progress there. And if you have other ideas about how each team can contribute, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'll just add, and I'm putting this in the agenda, but I'll finish my thought in a second after I say this, which is in our quarterly system usability scale survey, we have asked about mobile usage, and there's some really good information in there about the most common activities that users want to do on mobile. So that would be, I think, directionally, that would really help us with prioritizing.
Yeah, if you could send that to, I believe Kai would be the main PM on that, and Eric, that'd be super helpful.
Absolutely.
Jamie C. Number 10.
Sorry, my power just went out. I have an Epic where I've gathered a lot of features that would help our back-end office, like business operations in the small case. How do we draw attention to internal features that would help us other than opening the feature request issue?
We have a dog fooding board where we have a list of all the things that we would ideally like to dog food. And so we actively manage that. So one option is to get it added there. I'm not able to grok your list here real quick on the fly, but can you give me one example?
One example that we'd benefit from would be something like being able to create fields that are required.
Okay. That feels like a feature request rather than dog fooding. Jason, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say that if you add the dog fooding label, it will appear on the board.
Okay.
And it will be triaged by one of the PMs from the area where it belongs. And there's actually a few different paths that it can take there. One of them is that we need to build a new feature. and that's okay. We want to build a new feature to dog food. Sometimes it's re-implementing something that we found out in the market. Sometimes we've already built something that people are using sort of unofficially. We need to move it into the product. So all of those different kinds of paths can flow through that dog fooding label. So that's where I would start. Feature request label, just like you normally would on a new feature request issue. Add the dog fooding label, and then potentially ping the section director or the PM that's more specific to that area, just to let them know that you've added it.
Yeah, Jamie, just to make sure we're talking about the same thing. Dog fooding is GitLab has a feature and we want internal teams to use it.
Mhm.
You know, like right now, the monitoring group is working with infrastructure to make sure the infrastructure team uses our own feature set. Sounded like the example you raised was, hey, I'm an internal person and I have a request. This product, GitLab does not do something that I need.
Mhm.
In that case, the best bet is to treat it like a feature request. We do highly value things that have internal value because we know they'll get used. But you know, we'll have to balance that against things that customers want. And if there's alignment, great. If not, we'll have to make a hard trade between doing things that internal folks want versus external. Does that make
Thank you.
sense?
Yep. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Yep. Other questions? 4 minutes. All right. Thanks so much for joining. Have a great week. Bye now.